want to say thank you for letting me record this part. I think it'll be really helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
So we were talking about future pacing.
Yes.
And the steps in there are a couple of exit strategies. And my question is about that step, exiting, and using this for different situations and trying to isolate the best phrase for that step to then get the best result. Because
Okay. To exit the strategy.
Yeah.
So we know that it's always an internal process that leads to an emotion, right? Remember the strategy where the trigger, you're doing something, there's something internal.
That's right.
You're saying something and then you're turning it into a picture. Bottom line is it's you that's doing it. It's leading you to an emotion.
Okay.
That's a very different thing than being at effect, which is the situation controls your emotion.
Right.
Right? If the situation is controlling your emotion, that means the situation is controlling your internal dialogue.
Right.
So when we exit the strategy early, you don't give it an opportunity to go to the end. You exit it early by changing that internal dialogue.
Right.
So that means that you are in control of your emotional state, does it not?
Right. Versus, blaming the event or the circumstances for your reaction.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly. Because otherwise what happens is, well, I'm angry now because of what he said. I'm sad because I read this email and why would this person say this to me? And now I'm frustrated or now I'm anxious. So it's the email's fault, or at least the person that sent the email.
Right.
Right? It's your children's fault. It's your spouse's fault. It's somebody else's fault, but it's definitely not you, because those people get to control your internal dialogue. And they hijack it. And what I'm suggesting is, no, that's not true. You are actually in control of your internal dialogue. What happens if you change it? Right? This is why this has been working for you.
Right.
So is your question, why does it work? Or is your question, how do I come to a better outcome?
It's, well, how do I come to a better outcome, but then leverage it in different situations? Like, how do I isolate?
So let me answer both those questions.
Okay.
How do you come to a different outcome? Well, first of all, if you future pace it, then it's that whole idea that your brain is going to search through your filter in your brain. It's stimulus going to go through your filter into your brain. You're going to access old information, and now you're planting information that's useful to you rather than your history.
Right.
Because if the historical information was good and it was a good comparison to tell you how to behave, then you wouldn't have come here.
Right.
So the reason that you're getting these results is because you've now got more. This is the programming part of neuro-linguistic programming. You're programming your brain so that you have access to better information in those stressful situations.
Right.
And when you get into that positive, resourceful state, you have more behavioral flexibility, all of that stuff, right?
Right.
So let's take it in two parts. The first part is, so how do you get to a better outcome? Well, you future pace the better outcome when you're future pacing. When you're in a real life situation and you're doing it, the better outcome just happens.
Right.
Why does it happen? Because when you interrupt and exit your strategy early, you end up in a positive, resourceful state, an emotional state. That state is going to create a very different behavior, because the symptomatic behavior is coming from a specific strategy. Remember that?
Right, and we're
we
changing
listen
it
in many ways, and you do the same thing every single time the same way. This is why you probably heard people say things like, how you do anything is how you do everything. Or how you do your problem one place is how you do it every place. This is what they're referring to. It's a strategy. It's an unconscious thing.
Okay.
Now, you've said to me a couple times now that, well, I know this. I know that I'm in charge of my emotional state.
Right.
And so what I would say to that is that, yeah, consciously you know that. But we're not talking about consciously. We're talking about what your unconscious patterns are, because all
Right.
change occurs in the unconscious mind.
Right.
If you're a reader, right? So anybody who's ever read a book by Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, it doesn't matter, take your pick. They're all going to say the same thing. Stephen Covey, I'm a big fan of his. They're all going to tell you the same thing, right? It's not because they're copying each other. It's because the truth is the truth. Once people learn that they are at cause and not effect, their life gets better.
Right.
I'm not doing anything different than what those guys are saying. The only difference is I'm giving you an experience, and we're focusing the majority of the time on your unconscious processes. That's why people get such massive results in a short period of time, because that's impossible to do through a book. Through a book, I believe that, some I think are better than others. I've told you a couple of times, just read Tony Robbins. Yes, he's the most popular, and for that reason, sometimes people will shy away from him. But if you want to know, I mean, read Awaken the Giant or read Unlimited Power. There's 2 big, thick books that he's got. They're good reading. There's nothing in those books that's going to contradict the work that you and I are doing. There's nothing that you're going to read that you're going to say, well, this doesn't make sense to me. I can promise you that. So does that answer your question? What was the second question? First one was about how do you get to a different result?
Yeah, in terms of isolating sort of a phrase in that exit piece that really...
Yeah, so you future pace a better result,
yes.
and then you do it repeatedly.
Right.
So that's the answer to that question. And then in a real life situation, the better result just occurs.
Right.
How does it just occur? Well, because you're in a different emotional state.
And because more or less I've practiced this situation with a different outcome in the past, and my brain or my subconscious is drawing on that, and then I end up with a better result.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And you don't have to be so conscious about it. You don't have to think about it. You still will, but your unconscious mind will always overpower your conscious desires.
Right.
Because consciously, I mean, I get people all the time, consciously they don't want to smoke. Consciously they don't want to eat in a way that's not helpful to them for their weight loss goals. Consciously they want to go to the gym every day. So, and they understand that if they do those things, they're going to get better results, but they still don't do them.
Right. Which this addresses.
Yeah, because you can think about these things and learn about them, and you can read book after book, and you can watch TED Talk after TED Talk, and then wonder why your life's not getting any better.
Right.
You can be incredible. I mean, I get people that have anxiety. People like yourself, they know more about anxiety and the symptoms of anxiety than I'll ever know, because they've been studying it for years, trying to resolve their issue, and they get some success, and sometimes they get no success, because they're constantly just adding more and more data to their knowledge base, which is all conscious, but the problem is not living there. The problem is beneath their level of consciousness.
That's right. No. And I mean, I'm experiencing that personally. Anyway, through this, just a far more better impact from these sessions, more timely as well than the last year or so of making some changes in my routines, through my thought processes or daily routines in terms of eating and exercise and positive mindsets. I've had more progress in these sessions in this short time frame than I have in the last year and a half of implementing
because you're addressing the problem where it lives.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So do you have any more questions about specific strategy when it comes to future pacing?
No, not on future pacing. It was the at effect and the at effect and at cause, I'm sorry, that we spoke about last week. I realized once I left or the next day that I wasn't quite clear on those for some reason. I wrote them down. I didn't bring them today. But
so when you are in control of your emotional state and you don't give your power away to other people and to circumstances and environment, then you realize that you're causing your emotional response. When your environment, other people in your environment get to control your emotional response, that means you're at effect, which means you're a victim.
Okay.
I don't know if I gave you this example, but sometimes I use it. Imagine you're giving a remote control to everybody in your life and saying, here's a remote control, there's a bunch of buttons on it, and one says sadness, one says anger, one says frustration, one says anxiety, and I'd like you to just press whichever button you like so that I can respond in a way that's suitable for you. And what we're doing is we're taking those remote controls back from all those people and saying, sorry, but you don't get to have a remote control. I get to keep my remote control. So I will decide how I'm going to respond to whatever stimulus you present, because I'm going to be able to control my emotional state. And that's going to give me behavioral flexibility, because when you don't have that, then you have an impoverished model. You're looking like this, like a horse with blinders on. You got one or two ways of behaving, and neither one of them are very good. As soon as you rip the blinders off, and now you've got access to hundreds of ways of being, and your brain just puts them in order for you, then those negative ways of behaving still exist, but they're at the bottom of the pile.
Right.
This is why you're getting better results, because you actually have access to more behaviors. You always had them, you just didn't have access to them.
Right. I just kept going down the same path, the same routine, basically. And I know that I've experienced already the change where one particular individual, definitely I allowed that. That was one case where for sure I did not give myself the control. I was giving it up, and that's already changed through this. It's gone. Like the control that I gave them is gone.
Yeah, because he or she, you said he, because he was in control.
Right. I
And then
allowed
once
that
you-
though.
Yeah. And you realize that you allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you realize that you allowed it, you can respond in any way that you want.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But I found that what the sessions that address that specifically is what made the difference. Because I've known for quite some time that it is up to me, right? It's up to me how I react to these things, and trying to bring that in. I was not successful until these sessions.
Because you know what most people know. By the time people are our age,
Yeah.
they know these things because they've read it and they've heard it and people have said it. And
True.
all you have to do is go on Facebook and people are producing memes 100 miles an hour that all say these things.
Yes.
So it's not difficult to say, well, I already knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you knew that, but can you live it? That's where the change occurs.
Right.
So, all right. Are we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. We got it. We're going to move forward now to, yeah.
Okay.